Hey guys, welcome into the Lubbock or Leave It podcast, a recruiting-centric podcast here on Red Rider Sports, brought to you always by Carnley Properties. Our friend Clayton Carnley will always put his contact information as well as the site when we post these videos and all of our recruiting updates. But any of your real estate needs in the greater Austin area, give him a holler. I'm sure he can do things, even around other parts. But he's been great to us. Give him a call. Or visit them on the site, but we'll post that, here under the video. Give them a holler, and we appreciate you, Clayton. So Ben, how are you, sir?
I'm good. A lot of basketball news, but it's good to get back into football talk here.
Yeah, no, I was telling folks I was taking a back seat. Talk about a wild time. That'd probably take up too much of the podcast because we are here to talk football recruiting. No questions this week because we've got to catch up. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to talk about some of the what's happening right now. So we're going to start with some of the new offers. Then we're going to jump into, what I think is pretty interesting going into the month of May. And then now, skip forward to June. The NCAA has, lifted the no contact period or no visits and all that. So there's all these confirmed visits for June. So we'll take a look at some of those prospects. And then, I know you had a chance over the weekend to talk to one of the newest commitments, a Wisconsin safety transfer that played 13 games for the Badgers. So the coaches are constantly adding in this new world of graduate transfers. And it seems like that's actually not going to stop. But, first off, how have you been, man?
Yeah, I've been good and just staying busy, trying to stay on top of everything for the site and work and everything else. So I'm sure the same for you.
No doubt. I saw you were going to go to a AAU basketball tournament. You're gonna become a regular at those things?
Next weekend, yeah, that's the plan. I think with the new coaching staff, it's good to see some of their targets, and we'll see because everything is still so new, in basketball. But yeah, hopefully, and
Yeah,
hopefully it works out better than last year. Whenever I went to go see Jalen Tyson, and he ends up in Texas after all that. So. But that's all right.
It happens. It happens. I've covered plenty of kids just like that. I don't know if you ever heard of. We won't talk about him. Anyway, well, so new offers. That's a good segue because last time we were hanging out was at Rivals Camp here in Dallas, and the coaches have since offered really a handful of prospects, but wanted to focus on a few of these new offensive lineman offers because that number of offers had stayed at about 12 or 13 there for a while. And the guys they were offering were, let's just be frank, 30 plus offers, national guys with, let's say an official visit set up to Oregon or Ohio State, kind of not necessarily realistic targets. And even a few of these last offers, Ben, they've got some pretty healthy offer lists. So I know I had a chance to talk to the young man out of Frisco, Austin Kowecki. I hope I'm saying that correct. But we had a good conversation. And I'll just say what I put on the board. Very rarely people always ask me, Claire, these kids never know anything about tech. Why do you ask that? Well, I ask that because you interview 100 kids. One of them is going to say, oh, my brother goes to school there, or, oh, my parents went to school there, or, oh, my grandma's from Lubbock, So there's all sorts of reasons we ask that question. And when I talked to Austin about that, a few people had maybe alluded to that on the board, but I'd mentioned both of his parents went to Texas Tech. His extended family still lives in the Lubbock area. His sister's a student at Tech. So, this is a kid where you're maybe not having to sell Lubbock and, what it is or isn't. And so he said he was really excited about the offer. But again, that just happened a couple of days ago. So, where I was going at there is it is the end of April. And so he's had 24 other offers come in since January 1st of this year. Think about that. That's kind of crazy, right? For people listening to this, it's how many phone calls is that with the coaches? How many Zooms is that? All these different things is just kind of fascinating to me in this new, recruiting world. But he's going to take official visits to Baylor, Colorado, Oklahoma State, USC, and he's talking about North Carolina as well. So there's going to absolutely be competition there. But I don't know, in talking with him and knowing that they're going to be able to get him on campus, I do like their chances, and I do really like what I see on tape. I mean, I won't sit here and tell you that he just jumped out to us at Rivals Camp, But then again, I mean, it was a little bit of a different year with COVID and all that. And we kind of had to keep our distance. So I don't know. We weren't right up in the action. So anyway, I know that those were my thoughts on Austin. I know that there was another one, another offensive lineman offer last night, Nick. Or sorry, you were saying Nicholas Hall, right, Ben?
Yeah, Nicholas Hall out of the Austin area. He's another, like Haweki, you think of these guys and their offer list and how maybe attainable they are for a program like Texas Tech. And this is, like you mentioned, the guys who have 30 offers and visits to Ohio State. This is another one who is not that. I mean, Hall is another mid 3-star, and he has some decent offers. I mean, half the Big 12: Baylor, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, Kentucky. So again, pretty good competition, but that's, you want to get the program turned around. You need to recruit at that level and beat those kind of programs. So we talked a little bit. He's still working on his visit to Tech. He has one to Baylor in mid-June. But you assume the coaches will be able to get, a guy like that on campus, and offensive line is certainly a position where they need the help. It's a, hotly debated one on the site. And so, yeah, we'll see. It's good to see the new offers at that position, especially, not to be a Debbie Downer, but you had a guy yesterday from Lubbock, Jihad Latif, commit to Washington State. So that's a Power 5,
Yeah.
right out of your backyard. So we'll see years from now if that's, a good evaluation, if that's not, but it certainly makes for a good debate.
Yeah, I mean it does, and I'm not envious of the position, because you got to make a decision one way or the other. I'm a proponent of following the math, right? And so the more kids you offer, the more options you have out there, because you have to get them on campus. You have to, you got to get them in the boat, right? And so whether it's the local kid or whether it's the Dallas kid or the Houston kid, it doesn't matter to me really. But even there's an ebb. I was going to say there's an ebb and a flow to this. So that even while some of these kids are saying they're working on it, well, they've only had an offer for a couple of days or a week. By the time we've talked to them, so give it another couple of weeks, and it's on the calendar or it's tweeted out or something like that. I just think it's going to be. I don't want to say unprecedented to sound kind of dramatic, but I really think it's going to be the Wild West in June. I mean, I think kids are going to be, like taking Friday off and or no, it's the summer. Sorry, I think they're going to be whenever they can. I think they're going to be on a campus, right? And I think they'll be going in groups and whatever 7-on-7 road trips, whatever we want to call it. But they're going to hit all the schools that are easy to get to, and things of that nature. So I just think it's going to be during the week whenever they're going to be on college campuses. So
Yeah, I agree. And every single one of these regional programs is going to be hosting recruits every weekend, starting because it's been, 15, 16 months since they've been able to do so. It's just going to be fascinating. If you're a recruit with all these offers, how do you decide where to go? An official visits your whole weekend. If it's an unofficial, maybe you can go to, several schools in the same weekend, but an official, that's the whole weekend. So
well,
I'm just fascinated to see how that plays out.
Well, of course, Tech coaches have their high school prospects camp coming up in June as well. But there is also TCU. There's all those sorts of folks that are doing something similar. SMU is actually hosting a mega camp, and there's like a ton of different schools. And so you can see for obvious reasons why Texas Tech wouldn't want to be a part of that, because they compete for a lot of the same kids, and they're going to have their own camp. But I mean, hey, I think that's got to be a discussion as to like how do you circumvent that? Like, who could you partner? Like, how could you do something at UNT? How could you do something? How could you do something, right? Because there's going to be way more kids at that camp than are at that are in Lubbock for sure. I mean, that's just a fact. That's not even a nod.
100%. And for, if you're thinking of Tech maybe being one of the schools to join that SMU camp, I think that's a SMU decision to, hey, we're competing against several of these same recruits. We're not going to let you guys in here. Because you look at the schools that are on that SMU camp, there's no TCU, there's no Baylor. There are some big programs, but it's like USC and like Alabama, like these out of, state powers that SMU is not competing against. But SMU is not going to let Texas Tech onto their campus to evaluate their,
No.
so that makes sense. But I did see Tech, they are joining a camp. I think it's at East Texas. I sent it to you, I believe a couple of weeks ago. We'll need to look into that more. And I'm sure the the coaches will be, at a few others wherever, around the state and wherever they can go.
Yeah, I just, last thing we'll say, because we got to get back on topic, but even with the class of 2023, that's kind of the thing that everybody's like focused on official visits, but even those underclassmen will begin to like come for camps, come for even visits and whatnot. And that'll be huge because we always talk about being in early with some of these kids, and with recruitment changing and transfers being more prevalent. I mean, there's still some really talented 2023 kids that you need to be in on, right? So that'll be interesting to watch. So let's talk about those confirmed visits, and let's do that pretty quickly so we don't chew everybody's ear off. But we talked a lot about Curly Thomas. I think that Curly is really enjoying the recruiting process. I think that, it's great that he came to town. It's great that he's seen all Tech has to offer. I would expect him to go to Oklahoma State, Arkansas. I mean, you name it. There's a lot of schools he's going to go and visit. So that one's far from over, but he will be coming back for an official visit this summer. So again, promising. He's the thing he tells everyone is he's their number one prospect. So, I mean, that's what they're talking to him about.
Yeah, a lot of connections there too. A few other guys, Robert Spears Jennings, he was just on campus for the spring game. I think there was some word that he could be like an Ole Miss lean, but as of now, if he's still open, I still expect him to take the visit. Alvin Ebosil, I'm not sure how to say his name, but he's another offensive lineman from Coppell. I believe he tweeted out an official visit graphic. And then Marion Horn is really intriguing to me. He's a Rivals 250, out of Oklahoma, listed as a defensive back, but I believe the coaches are recruiting him to play offense, running back potentially. And so he's actually shown Tech a lot of love. I got to talk to him. And so you think of that kind of player, you always think he's going to end up at Oklahoma, but if he's going to take an official to Lubbock, you can't count Tech out.
Yeah, there's a few more I had written down here. Those are definitely some good ones. Staying on, not the official visit theme, but Travell Johnson out of the Arlington area. He's a linebacker that's committed to Texas, but he's going to take visits. And I don't know, Sam wrote an interview with him. That was the whole like empty the rocks out of the bag comment, whatever that was. But anyway, I don't think much of it or read into it, but getting kids on campus is always a good thing. Sheridan Wilson out of Argyle, we've covered him a lot, but another longtime offensive lineman target. The kid that I'd talked to and posted a story about recently that I thought was probably the most intriguing is Caden Weatherby out of Centennial in Colorado. He said his top two is Kansas State and Texas Tech. He's going to take his visits and make a decision. So, you got to like your chances of at least being 50-50. But I don't know a lot about Caden just other than text and talking to him a few other times. But I just thought that one was one to note. And then the last one I was going to mention, we've already talked about Austin Kowecki, so he will, get that set up, official, unofficial. And then I know you wanted to talk about Jaren Kennett because you guys had talked the athlete out of Kansas, but the last one that we did confirm, of recent is Cedar Hill cornerback Jalen Peoples. And I know we wanted to talk about Jalen a little bit because he puts Tech in his top five. I believe it's Iowa, Baylor, Kansas, and SMU. Yeah. And so, I mean, this kid is at one point in time been told both you and I that he wasn't talking with Texas Tech, so much so that I was on campus talking to Charles Esters and meeting with all these coaches that I knew anyway. And he told me he wasn't talking to Tech, so we didn't even do an interview, right? So it can kind of show you maybe how things change. I'm not sure. I mean, Jalen has 30 offers listed on his profile, from everything I've seen at Cedar Hill and at games and even at the camp circuit, he looks the part. So I guess maybe things turned around because when he started responding to me, he had nothing but great things to say about the Tech coaches, specifically the Tech, corners coach. And so, I think with a visit and the right momentum, maybe that starts going in the right direction.
Yeah, I think you nailed it with I saw him, he trains with Coach Flight, who's a DB coach here in the Dallas area, who also coached Kobe Minor. and a few other guys who ended up at Tech. But yeah, I saw him over the summer, and people's was talking about Oklahoma State and Nebraska and Baylor, and he's like, yeah, I'm not hearing from Tech at all, even though he had an offer. And then yeah, at some point things changed. I'm not sure if it was, mainly Derek Jones, as you mentioned, or if the new recruiting staff came in here and decided to use their connections and re-up the interest there. But that's a former 4-star prospect. Now he's a 3-star, but another one of these guys I mentioned who, if you want to get the program turned around, you just have to start winning these battles against your interconference rivals.
Yeah, I think especially in the Big 12, you can, really college football these days, you've got to have good corners, and you've got to have several of them, because the offense is just getting more open and there's more passing. I mean, it's been like that for years, but yeah, any of these guys, and especially we talk about it a lot, but there is merit to it. When you're at a place like Cedar Hill and you're going up against guys like Jaron Bradley in high school, that makes a difference when you get to the college level in terms of your readiness and where you're at in your development. So I know I touched on it just so that we wouldn't forget. The only other guy on my list, and maybe you have others before you talk about Jaron Kinnick, I hope I'm saying that right. But Kyron Chambers told me he's getting a visit set up as well, South Oak Cliff. So really along the same lines as what we talk about there with Peoples. But really nice kid. We got to meet him at Under Armour, and he had great things again to say about the Texas Tech coaches. So again, it's all about June, guys. I mean, it really is. Getting these guys on campus, that's off the top of my head, 11 or 12 guys we've mentioned, what happens after that, right? I mean, some of them, at least 3 to 4 of those, right? Boom, 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 commit. So that's the plan, right?
That's how it was last time they had visits in June 2019. That was a fun weekend, fun couple of weeks there with the 10 commits or so in that month. It was a lot to cover, but it was a good time. Do you want to go over the couple of 2021 potential additions? I know there was a USC defensive lineman you mentioned, and then there's another junior college linebacker who I'll talk about in a second.
Yeah. So real quick, I only because I mentioned his name twice. So Jaron Kinnick is listed as an athlete. I believe the coaches are recruiting him as a linebacker. So he talked about setting up an official visit this summer. So I added him to my list. That I believe you talked to him, correct?
Yeah, it was a little over a month ago. At the time, he mentioned Iowa, Nebraska, Washington State, Kansas State. He said he'd like to visit Tech, but I haven't talked to him in the month since, so I don't have an update there. I think he's a guy that a lot of people are thinking is going to end up at Kansas State. He's the number 6 prospect in the state of Kansas. So, but he's a blazing fast athlete. Can play linebacker. I think he would be a good addition. I need to catch up with him, and we'll have an update there.
Okay. I think the last time we did one of our podcasts, there's like this big tornado watch or something, and now I have like 70 texts from friends and family like, hey, the tornado's headed, your way. So I hope I'm okay. Hope this isn't the last podcast we ever do. But anyway, sorry, that's why I was looking at my phone. But no, so we wanted to round it out. You had talked to Reggie Pearson. I teased that commitment off the top, but graduate transfer from Wisconsin, and plays safety. He's going to come in. I know you have a lot more details, but at a high level, maybe there was some medical concerns or something with an injury. But he's all cleared, good to go, and now he's headed to Lubbock. So maybe give us some details on Reggie.
Yeah, this is a guy Tech's been after for a couple months now since he entered the portal. He was committed to South Dakota for about a week. I think Tech was doing all their background work on that injury and trying to get him cleared, and I believe they did that. So he's going to come in, and he should be good to go. Otherwise, I don't think they would have taken him. But yeah, when you look at the, highlights are highlights, and you can only make so much of that. But just his are just tremendous as far as just like a tackler and a hitter. You think of like a Big Ten, you think defense, and that's what shows up when you look at him. I think he can play some safety, some nickel. He was as a redshirt freshman, he played the 4th most snaps on the Wisconsin defense. And Wisconsin's, always a program that's kind of known for defense. So I just thought that stood out to me. His PFF grade, 68.3, doesn't sound that great, but it's very solid. That was the second best, among defensive backs on Wisconsin. So he's a standout player. I think, Matt Wells always talks about building competitive depth, and now you add this guy. You have Muddy Waters, who came from Duke, and Eric Monroe. It would be a second year at Tech. So I just think those are three safeties, and then you have your high school guys who are coming through the ranks, like Dadrion Taylor and Jonathan Davis and all these guys. Yeah, that's how you do it. And this is a guy who has 3 years left, so it's not a 1 year grad transfer and we'll see you. This is a guy you can kind of build with 3 years of eligibility remaining. And I think he's motivated. I think the Wisconsin situation, I don't think he wanted to leave. I think he was trying to get cleared. He couldn't. So now he's motivated to go out there and, try to show everyone, how good he can be.
Yeah, it sounded like a pretty good, backstory there. So that's all you can ask for, really, with all that you mentioned, is building depth, building competition, and hopefully the old and the new, meld together for a nice group there in the secondary. Well, I know they're also trying to add depth on the defensive line. I had posted about a transfer from USC that was talking with the Texas Tech coaches. And I know that he was supposed to have a Zoom. So he plays defensive tackle. I don't have his name right in front of me. Sorry, guys. I'm thinking about tornadoes now.
Tremblay, right?
Caleb Tremblay, correct.
Yeah.
So he was another, highly rated 4-star guy, I believe 2017 class. I believe somebody had mentioned he's like an older senior because his same class as like Dakota and some other people. I don't know if that's a joke, but he goes pretty far back there. For being eligible. But, again, I think they're looking at depth on the D line. I think they talk to, or at least throw out a lot of lines, to some of these kids. And so if they've got to do their due diligence. So I think some of the first steps is getting on a Zoom like this, getting to know the kid and doing their background. But from the stats that I'd showed, he really just didn't get on the field at USC, which is not the worst thing in the world. But, he did have some starts.
I'm looking at it. Yeah, his snaps for the only 71 snaps this year, COVID season. So I don't know, maybe he missed a few games, but he was a starter for one game and then was a role player for 3 others. But his biggest season was 2019, it appears, played 261 snaps, and his PFF numbers are actually pretty solid. In those 261 snaps, 19 pressures, 14 hurries. So, a guy who can, help you pressure the quarterback, and he has great size, 6'5", 270, or that's what he's listed as over here. I don't know if that's accurate, but I know the coaches were looking to add another bigger defensive lineman to the mix. So, he could be a good addition.
Yeah, and I mean, it's easy to forget when you're looking these things up. Like, I quickly forgot that the Pac-12 only played 6 games, so then you say, oh, okay, 3 games is actually half the season. So it kind of does change your perspective. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's depth. It's guys that can spell Bradford. It's guys that can spell the other guys on the line, and ultimately keep everybody fresh and effective on the defensive line. So that was probably the most recent, grad transfer that I had talked to. I believe you had mentioned a JUCO player that you had talked to who might even be on the Zoom with the coaches tonight.
Yeah, just found out that Zoom did not take place, but I think that's still expected to happen. Trey Wilkins, he's a junior college linebacker at Independence Community College. That's Last Chance U. And yeah, he's a former Kentucky signee, class of 2019. He's a bounce back. I don't know the whole story there, but he was offered couple weeks ago. And he also holds offers from, Louisiana Monroe and some of these other programs, Toledo, I believe. But yeah, Texas first Power 5 offer. 6'4", like 230, I believe, I want to say, something like that. So he was a Kentucky signee out of high school who had very good offers out of high school. So he would be a guy that would enroll this summer potentially. And so I believe, the coaches still have a handful of spots to play with. Could that defensive lineman you just mentioned, another linebacker, and then we'll see what else. I believe a receiver is a want also. There was a guy they wanted who ended up at Oklahoma not too
Yeah.
long ago. So still a handful of spots to play with this summer to try to add to the depth for this season.
It feels like the transfer portal is like maybe the roulette table, and you've had a few drinks and you're with all your friends, and maybe you're betting numbers, maybe you're just betting red, black, odd, even. But that's what it feels like, because it feels like, and even you guys cover the heck out of this basketball stuff. It's like so and so is talking to blah 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 and Texas Tech, right? Just like boom, 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 boom. It feels like that. Like, I mean, look, you're talking about the kid from Arkansas, that the Woods kid that went to Oklahoma. I mean, think about it. If all that's true, and he's on a Zoom call with the Tech coaches, he's on a Zoom call with Oklahoma, blah 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 blah. I mean, it is like go go go. And then sometimes it works in your favor with like Shuck and guys like that. You're able to draw them in, and other times you just bust out, but you keep going. I mean, it's amazing how even today the two kids from A&M went into the portal. Now that I feel like everyone, once they have their spring game, you see like a transfer or two. And so, I mean, I think we could have a totally new and dedicated podcast, its own hour dedicated to the transfer portal, how that affects high school recruiting, what it looks like for Texas Tech. I mean, the whole thing is just fascinating.
Yeah, I'm all for the freedom for the players. If their coaches get to leave or move as often as they do, why shouldn't players? But it is wild, and it's just going to get more wild, I believe. But that, like you mentioned, that's a whole other discussion for another day. I just think from an overall recruiting standpoint, the way I look at it now, and the way Texas Tech's been kind of approaching it is taking a high school prospect is so much riskier now, because guess what? They can leave and not sit out. And I feel like that's happening so much often now, so much more often. Whereas if you take a transfer like a Reggie Pearson, who has 3 years left, he would have to sit out a year if he left again. So it's just that much harder for him to maybe make that decision. Maybe you get more commitment now from guys who transfer in because they can't leave as easily. It's just fascinating to me.
Well, and I can guarantee coaches love living in that world, because, there's out of all the Caleb's and Reggie's that like respond and do an interview with us, there's another half of those kids that have already been there. I've already done that. I don't need to do a recruiting story, and wham, bam, I'm committed. I'm here. It's done. It's a whole new world, man. But I'm not over here having a bleeding heart for the high school kids, but it does make it interesting, right? Those 20 offers or those 30 offers start to look like a little bit different of a perception when you consider some of these kids and what options are really still around for them. Because the top of the food chain is always going to eat, the Alabamas or Clemsons or whoever we want to talk about. But I think you're already starting to see an effect in how coaches are taking more transfers, considering that balance and leaving those spots open. But anyway, I said it would take another hour, so I shouldn't keep talking there. But that's all we had. We wanted to get back on track with the recruiting pod. Next week, we'll get back with getting you guys involved with your questions. And as we trend towards June, we'll just try to add as many, confirmed visitors, and even, dig into some of the 2023s. We got some stuff coming up on that as well. But Ben, anything else?
Yeah, I would just say, that I'm excited to see who comes for the camps too in early June. I think there's going to be hundreds of kids there, and maybe guys who are unknown yet will pop up, like Trey Cleveland did 2 years ago when he got his offer and committed the same day. You just never know. So
Jack Tucker.
Yeah, Philip Leedy too, I believe, got his offer at camp. So it's should be good, and we'll do it again soon, Matt.
All right. Hey, thanks again. We'll include Carnley Properties and Clayton's information under here. You guys give them a call. Until next week, you guys have a good one.